This episode is brought to you by Experian Automotive. Experian helps the auto industry turn powerful vehicle, consumer, and credit data into action. From smarter marketing and better credit decisions to fraud protection, vehicle history, and market insights, they can help you move faster and stay ahead of the competition. Learn more at Experian Automotive.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Monday, July 27th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Honda has a new plan to take on Subaru. A major used car chain says it may not survive. And Waymo is breaking up with Uber. Plus, Andrew Garberson of Recurrent talks about why used EV prices are creeping up, even as the market gets flooded with off-lease supply.
There are so many different market factors happening that are contributing to the used EV market definitely having a moment in the summer of 2026.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Honda is eyeing a lifted Accord hatchback for potential 2029 production launch in Marysville, Ohio. Think Subaru Outback territory. The so-called Accord SUV would ride on the existing Accord platform, keeping R&D costs low. It would arrive alongside a redesigned Accord sedan, both featuring Honda's next-generation hybrid powertrain. Edmunds analyst Ivan Jury says Honda loses more customers to the Outback than any other nameplate. And Auto Forecast Solutions' Sam Fiorani says potential sales could actually exceed the traditional Accord sedan. America's Car Mart is fighting for survival. The used vehicle retailer told investors there's a substantial doubt it can continue operating without securing additional financing, even after closing 60 dealerships this year and restructuring nearly $300 million in debt. CEO Doug Campbell says the company's ability to originate loans at the volume customers want will remain limited until new financing is secured. CarMart posted a net loss of $139 million in its most recent fiscal year, compared to about $18 million in profit a year earlier. Waymo is moving to end its exclusive robotaxi partnership with Uber. An Uber spokesperson confirmed that Waymo gave notice it plans to launch its own app in Austin and Atlanta in January 2028, ending exclusivity in both cities. The current fleet stays on Uber's platform through at least May 2028. The split is a major blow to Uber's strategy of becoming the go-to aggregator for driverless rides. According to Bloomberg News, Uber privately cited unsustainable economics and persistent safety and reliability concerns. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now to talk more about Honda's plan to fight Subaru with an Accord hatchback is Urvash Kakaria, Atlanta Bureau Chief here at Automotive News, who covers Honda for us. Urvash, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Happy Monday, Kel. Thanks for having me back.
All right, Urvash, so you write about Honda drawing a clear lesson from the Accord cross-tour struggles in the early 2000s. Now, what's different about the market now that makes Honda and the analysts you spoke with feel more confident this time around?
Yeah, so this vehicle, as it's been described to me in the planning document, it's referred to as an Accord SUV, but it's not really going to be an SUV. It's going to be somewhere between a cross of a kind of a lifted sedan, hatchback, meets wagon kind of product. So think of an Accord, but maybe a little higher riding, taller, and with a hatchback. And this is sort of drawn parallels to the Cross Tour, which was a short-lived experiment a little over a decade ago. But I think what's different this time around is that, even though the Cross Tour was similar, I think it was a little ahead of its time. Back then, there was no clear delineation between a sedan and an SUV. I mean, they were like black and white. Today, you're seeing more of a melding. You have a number of models like the Toyota Crown Signia, even the BMW X4, that are these, sleek car-based crossovers. So the market is more used to these kind of cars. They see the utility of having a the cargo flexibility of a vehicle like this, of a hatchback or a wagon like this, without having to pay, without having to go full SUV or full crossover, and then of course paying those higher prices. So that's kind of, why the dealers are also very excited about this product, because they say that a vehicle like this will be incremental volume, but it's important incremental volume. It'll help Honda address a niche, which is, consumers or shoppers, vehicle shoppers, like I said, who, are transitioning between a sedan and a crossover. They want the price of a sedan, but maybe they want the higher ride height or the cargo flexibility of an SUV, I mean, of a crossover.
Well, you brought up dealers, and what else are the dealers saying about this? Because this model will slot right between the Accord sedan and
Yeah.
the existing Passport and Pilot crossovers. Are they worried about cannibalizing those nameplates?
It's unlikely that there'll be much cannibalization there. And I think if anything, it would cannibalize more on HRV. Passport Pilot are slightly larger vehicles or larger vehicles. But again, I think this is a low risk, uh, relatively speaking, low risk, low investment approach. They're still going to use the Accord platform, so that's already developed. It's kind of large enough to support long enough, the Accord platform, to support a kind of a utility like model, a hatchback. So there'll be minimum investment, or relatively minimum investment required to sort of quickly develop a vehicle like this, which, according to my sources, is expected to go into production in mid 2029. So not very far off.
All right, perfect. Urvash, as always, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Have a great week.
Coming up, used EV prices are rising, even as a wave of off-lease supply hits the market. Recurrent's head of research explains why, next on Daily Drive.
This episode is brought to you by Experian Automotive. In today's auto market, every decision matters, and the businesses winning are the ones powered by better data. That's where Experian Automotive comes in. Experian combines industry-leading vehicle, consumer, and credit data with deep automotive expertise to help dealers, lenders, manufacturers, and industry partners make smarter decisions and move faster. Want to connect with the right shoppers at the right time? Looking to sharpen your marketing, make more confident credit decisions, better understand vehicle history, spot market trends, or strengthen your defenses against fraud? Experian helps make it happen. But it's not just about having a lot of data. It's about knowing what to do with it. Experian's automotive experts understand the challenges facing the industry today and help turn complex information into clear, actionable insights that drive results. Whether you're focused on growing your business, improving efficiency, managing risk, or staying ahead of market shifts, Experian Automotive gives you the intelligence and tools to compete with confidence. Learn more at experianautomotive.com. Experian Automotive, powering smarter decisions across the automotive ecosystem.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Used EV prices have been quietly climbing all year, up 5% since January on a weighted basis, and as much as 20% for some affordable models. That's according to Recurrent's third quarter used EV prices and market report. What makes it unusual isn't just the appreciation. It's that it's happening alongside a surge in off-lease supply. More than 500,000 leased EVs are expected to return to the used car market this year alone. Andrew Garberson is head of growth and EV research at Recurrent. He spoke with our own Molly Boygon on the latest episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast. Garberson explains what's really driving prices up and what the fastest turning used EVs on the market right now have in common.
Andrew Garberson, head of growth and research at Recurrent. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
It's great to be here.
So Recurrent's used EV prices and market report is out for the third quarter, hot off the presses last week. What were your main takeaways from the findings in the report?
I mean, the headline story is that used EV prices continue to creep up. This is something that we weren't originally following closely, but we kept hearing it from dozens, almost hundreds of our dealer partners at auction, they were feeling it every day and watching it. And so when we dug into it, we actually looked at different cohorts of the same make model year and followed them over time, comparing year over year and month over month. And what we found is just comparing June prices to January prices, they rose by 5% on a weight adjusted basis. And some of the models on the more affordable end jumped 20% since January. And so when we look at the trends and compare the EVs that are selling the fastest right now, there's definitely a slant toward affordability, and that's actually something that we've seen that's consistent. Anytime gas prices go up, affordability becomes very in vogue, and so that's certainly what we're seeing in the market today.
You mentioned in the summary of the report that used EV prices appreciating almost never happens. When was the last time? And yeah, just to give our listeners a sense of sort of how unusual this is.
Yeah, and obviously prices go up, prices go down. This is the used car market we're talking about here. But when you isolate the same make model year cohorts and follow them over time, looking at a period of 6 months of slow appreciation month after month is super interesting. So we did see this in 2022 after the Ukraine invasion pushed gas prices up. Now, that was also on the heels of the pandemic and an overall used car shortage. But supply was going to be a big part of that equation. In 2026, I don't think it's a supply issue. 500,000 plus leased EVs are going to return to the used car market this year, based on our data, and even more next year. So we actually are seeing a rush of used EV supply into the market, and prices are still appreciating. So that's something that catches your eye, and you say to yourself, what's going on here? And then you begin to pick apart the layers to try to see how it all adds up.
So I don't know how much of a sort of supply demand Russian nesting doll situation I'm about to get into, but I wonder if, as you say, this off-lease EV supply is landing in large numbers, probably unprecedented numbers, because we have this wave of 2023 through 2025 EV lease originations not being bought out and returning. Is that sort of counterintuitively driving demand? Consumers are seeing these affordable EVs hit the market at volume just as gas prices are going up, and that's sort of drumming up increased demand. Like how else do you explain both that increase in off-lease volume and a rise in prices?
Yeah, I will admit that my macroeconomics class as an undergrad was at 8 a.m. on Fridays. So I showed up and I took notes as best I could. So I'll be a little rusty here, but that's the way that I understand it. So um, what you said is correct, that we are experiencing a set of conditions that we've never experienced before. Anytime there had been supply shortages or increased demand coming from things like tax credits, we were talking about a very, very small used EV market, very immature, right? And for the most part, we were talking about one brand. Most of the used EV market had a Tesla logo on it, but that's largely changed. And just based on the number of leases that happened in the early years of the Inflation Reduction Act and the brands that were leasing them, coming from Kia and Hyundai and VW, these companies had 70% plus lease rates. And so now they're all coming back to the used car market in a fairly predictable schedule. And so this is just a surge of volume that we've never experienced before. And so, yes, gas prices certainly drive people to the used car market, but that's not the only story here. There are so many different market factors happening that are contributing to the used EV market definitely having a moment in the summer of 2026.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of those other market factors? You have this really interesting figure in the report. A 2023 Chevy Bolt EV sells within 12 days. That's the median length of time it sits on the lot before selling. And in comparison, the average used vehicle takes about 6 weeks to sell. So you are comparing one of the best selling EVs, used EVs on the market to the average, but still that's pretty staggering. So can you just talk a little bit about some of the other market factors beyond gas prices that are driving that type of interest?
Yeah, and it's so hard to start to disconnect all of the factors and how they influence each other. And so, one of the things that I would certainly point out, we looked at the fastest turning used EVs on the market right now, and there are definitely some consistencies. So, one is the Bolt EV, another one is the Bolt EUV, the Kia EV6 is right up there at the top of the list. And one thing those all have in common is that they all start with a 2 on the used market. So those are going to be $20, $25, $28,000 used EVs that are relatively new model years with low mileage, but more than anything, it's an approachable price tag. And so I think that's certainly a theme. And that is something that could be connected to gas prices and just overall inflation. And so I don't want to overlook that, but one that certainly stands out when you look at that list is that number 2 on the list was the F-150 Lightning. And so that's a large pickup truck, and it sells in a little over 12 days on average with a price tag of about $44,000. So there are a lot of things happening here. The F-150 Lightning was discontinued, so there's some scarcity in there as well. But one of the drivers that we talked to recently, they were considering an EV for a long time, and they were an F-150 driver. They loved their truck. And finally, they took their truck to the gas station and they tried to fill it up with gas, and the pump shut off at $200 because that was the limit for the credit card. And they turned to their spouse in the car and said, "I'm done. I'm out." And so they had been considering an EV. They'd maybe been on the fence for a while, but it was that moment where elevated gas prices it was just the final little push to get them over the edge. And a week later, they were driving an F-150 Lightning and they love it. So not strictly a gas story and not strictly a supply and demand story, but I think a lot of these are kind of weaving together to help create this moment that we're seeing.
Recurrent head of growth and EV research, Andrew Garbison, spoke with our own Molly Boygon. You can hear the full conversation on the latest episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Urbash Kakaria and John Hutter for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on Honda's product strategy, the used EV market, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a look at the trends defining this year's Automotive News Top Suppliers list. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.